Where's council? Tony's here. I think this is, Mike, are you, is this Mike Bangu, M?
Yeah, I'm here, Mayor. I'm listening in.
Thanks, Tony. Who's the individual that signed in as Mike Guest?
We'll just wait a few more minutes, Your Worship. I see that Adam has just arrived, and that'll give a few more minutes for others of the public who show up.
Okay.
Your worship, we don't have many here, but I propose we start, and if this ends up being just a good brainstorming discussion to talk through kind of parks in the city, I think it'll still be very fruitful.
I think it will as well. So welcome, everyone, especially Lori. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come and join us and work on parks. I still want to ask who Mike is on the call. We have Councillor Luck on the line, and we have Councillor Ettord. I'm not sure we have any other councillor here, so I'm not sure where they are, but let's begin. And Sean, I'm just going to turn this over to you at this point and have you start with the plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let me open this up. Can everyone see this okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So you already kind of made your introduction, Reverend. That's what the slide number 1 was. But the short of it here is I have a short presentation that, in all honesty, could be expanded into well more than 3 hours of discussion, I'll guarantee it. But it all stems from the city's Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan. And so this is one of the plans that we've done more recently than many of our others, in that it was created in March of 2017. And there's some things that were done very well with that plan. There was extensive consultation. There was, even as far as phone surveying, in addition to the online surveying. So there were some really positive things with how the information was gathered. The challenge is that it was fairly narrow in its scope for actually offering specific feedback on what the plans for each individual park are. And so we'll kind of go through what that challenge means. But we did want to let residents know that they can access the entirety of this plan at merit.ca//downloads/ or by clicking on that hyperlink, which we will put out. So the first thing to note is that parks in Merritt versus the provincial average, this is hectares of park space per 1,000 residents. So when this survey was done when this master plan was done in 2017, the city of Merritt had 4.5 hectares of park space per 1,000 residents. So the provincial average, and that's the provincial average in municipalities, is 3.18. So we had considerably more park space per person than the average municipality.
Wow.
So that's the good news story, but there's a kind of a sad news story to this afterwards. And so since 2017, we've actually done even more, because we have rezoned 8 parcels as park. So even though our population has gone up from about the 72 in 2017 to closer to 7,800 now, so 600 additional people, we've added a lot more park parcel, which you'll see later in the presentation. The challenge is that none of that parcel has had anything done with it yet. And so in terms of the developed park space per resident, it's actually gone down since 2017, strictly because the population has gone up. So there are some major areas for improvement when it comes to park in the city, and these are well documented in this plan. The first is, despite the fact we have lots of parkland, it isn't well distributed. And in particular, looking at this map here, this will show different colors for the distance to schools as well as distance to parks. And there is absolutely no park, well, except there's one tiny community park that we'll show you now, that has recently been created, but there simply isn't park in the Diamond Vale area. Similarly, up in Grandview Heights area, there isn't park, and in the southern portions of the of Collettville, there isn't park. There is access to schools in those areas, which do serve, a recreational purpose still. So we don't want to minimize that, but no formal park in those areas, and that is one of the key challenges that's identified in the master plan. The next challenge, pardon me, is that aside from Central and Rotary Park, we really have fairly few features and amenities in our parks. You think of Fairley Park, Vote Park, Nicola, Centennial, these Lions Memorial Park, these have less amenities than what you would expect for kind of a developed park area. There's some good things happening. In Boat Park, there is bathrooms, which is a huge pro, but there's a track that is a little bit oblong, and it really, for the tract of land that it is, it's underutilized park. And we'll talk through some of the other ones as well. But what I want council to be aware of, and others from the public, is one of the major reasons why our parks are underdeveloped. We have a fair bit of land because you collect land through subdivision. We don't have the funding going to develop things on that park. And that's because we don't charge park development cost charges. That's a fairly significant problem, and one that when we bring forward the DCC bylaw update, staff is going to be recommending the institution of a park DCC charge, so that not only will we collect the land itself at subdivision, there will be a provision towards DCC projects, which will be improvement of various park areas. So there will be some funding from developers going towards amenities in parks. I think that this is, I can't overstate the importance of building that in. And I think it's one of the problems why, in my opinion, we are lagging behind in terms of park infrastructure development, despite the fact we have a sound amount of park land. The other, I'd say, critical problem with the master plan that we have is that it only sets out detailed plans for 4 different areas. That's for Central Park, Vote Park, Rotary Park, and Spirit Square. So, and that isn't to say that even the detailed plans that are set out for those park areas are perfect. In fact, I would go as far as to say there's some, major areas of concern, particularly at Vote Park, with the viability of those plans, given it's in a floodplain area. The bigger challenge from a staff perspective is that we have a whole lot of other park areas that there are really no formal plans for whatsoever, meaning that either you fly by the seat of your pants and you propose projects for whatever the whim of the day is, or alternatively, you are you're putting budget projects forward to council that is going to be subject to whatever the key interest for a few residents is. It could be a pet project that has sometimes happened in the past. So really wanting to establish formal plans for all of our park areas, and that would include things like Nicola, Lions Memorial, Centennial, Fairley, newly created Collet Island Nature Sanctuary, as well as a whole bunch that have been recently created through rezonings. We do want to note for council as well that many of these newly created park zones have not yet formally been dedicated as park. And so that is something that we're going to be bringing forward to council in the upcoming months, is to take some of these parks that have recently been given through subdivision and the rezoning process and formally dedicating those parks so that they can be established forevermore into the future. But because there aren't dedicated plans, in the opinion of staff, the utilization of those parks is lower than it ought to be. So the primary purpose of this town hall meeting is to start a discussion for many of these different park areas. So starting off the hop with Fairley Park, one
Sean,
of the things Yes, go ahead. Your
I'd
worship.
also like to add that it may be that we also are looking at other parks, not just the parks that we have. I mean, that's a whole different kettle of fish, but this is not the only ones we're wanting to look at this point in time.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. There are a number of different parks, and again, the master plan identifies that there should be the creation of new parks, particularly in the Diamond Vale area. And we'll go through some of the newly created parks, but council is well aware that it has, through tax sale, acquired a property on Walnut Ave that may be suitable for some form of park use. And there are other parks that will come up and be developed over time. And so I think part of this is developing something of a policy or a process for how we are going to integrate parks into our broader plans, and have it where they don't just sit there as a land holding for 10 or 15 years before somebody decides to do something about it. Thank you for that comment, Mayor Brown. We're going to get into the more interactive portion of this.
On top of that too, Sean, sorry, there's two other parks that I don't see in here, and those are the ones on the bench.
You're going to have some of these come up, Your Worship,
okay.
as some of the newly created parks, and you're going to also see like a lot of this. I think you're talking about the one that's adjacent to the school property.
Yeah.
And so that's something that there's going to be a proposal put forward to council at actually the upcoming council meeting for how we can better utilize some of that park. But there are these parks, actually, that one isn't in the presentation. I think it's the only one that's not, but you'll see a bunch of these as they come up. So first one we wanted to talk about, though, was Fairley Park. So one of the major things that was identified in that master plan was that the city residents across the city really appreciated having a park that was dedicated to younger children. In fact, some of the comments were that unlike a lot of the other parks where people tended to use the one that was closest to them, people would drive across town to go to Fairley Park because it's the only one that is suitable for, say, a 2-year-old child. And so there were some really favorable comments about this being dedicated to younger children, as well as some comments that the playground equipment, that there could be more playground equipment, perhaps that it could be higher quality. Could there be different types of play areas, like perhaps a small maze? It's something that's becoming a lot more common right now, is creating more tactile experiences for children as part of their learning and development. And so there's likely some opportunities to enhance the plans for Fairley Park and make it so that it is even going to be more of an attractive destination as kind of the premier young child park in the city of Merritt. So some of the questions that came up is, are the 2 picnic tables sufficient? And what in particular would you like to see at Fairley Park in order to make this a better used?
Picnic tables for adults would be one thing, or seating of some kind.
There is a bench, and there's two benches and 2 picnic tables there, but and there wasn't comment saying that was insufficient, but I think that if you make this have a bigger play structure where more kids can be there at a time, you may need to correspondingly increase the number of picnic tables and benches.
Could I maybe chime in for a sec there, Sean?
Please do, Charlie.
I wholeheartedly agree there should be some updates to the play structures. We've seen great support with council, with Central Park and Rotary Park, which were projects that I had put forward. This one will probably come up on a MIA count. The structure is getting older, and we've always ran with grants for the surfacing as well. So I think we've received close to almost $70,000 in grants when it comes to surfacing. So I'm in agreement that a playground should be updated here with the rubber. You can see it is the engineered wood fiber. For younger children, rubber would probably be a better solution. The other great portion about this playground is it has washrooms as well. So I think there's great potential here, and probably maybe larger picnic tables and some updated structures. I think that would be a great idea.
Are the
Charlie,
washrooms in good shape, Charlie?
Yes, the washrooms are there, I believe, and don't hold me to this, Your Worship, but I believe there was fundraising with the washrooms and the playground. And I think the chief had mentioned that to me at some point.
And Your Worship, sorry if you don't mind me interrupting. Obviously, we're recording this since there's a fairly low public attendance tonight, but the recording only captures the audio and the video. So there's been a public submission in the chat. So just to read that into the conversation as well, because otherwise it wouldn't be recorded. That's the suggestion that an open shaded area, like a covered picnic area, would be nice given the heat and the sun.
One question from kind of more of an engineering standpoint, Charlie, given that there's a pump house in there, would expanding the playground infrastructure cause any issues with the well infrastructure?
We're really pushing the limits on the distance from the pump with the washroom. Our source water protection plan is basically very minimal standards where that washroom was placed in the area of that pump house. I think if we were looking to do an upgrade with that playground, we may even see if MIA, the Municipal Insurance Association, would green light the playground that's there and then create another. So maybe incorporating two and leaving excavation to not complete excavation around that pump house and the washroom due to the infrastructure below. With the rubberized surface, you do have to excavate down. You do also need to excavate for concrete curbing. So if we're looking at a recommendation with shade, maybe we can incorporate a seating area with shade at a new area of a playground.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of grass space in the other corner there, and so there you probably could utilize other portions of that. It is kind of concentrated in the one corner as it stands, so.
And just a further note, if I may, to that, Sean, in terms of space, remember that we also have the railway bed behind, so we can actually expand Fairley Park down that corridor to Spring Street. So if we needed to add further amenities, we have that space as well in future.
If I may just interject on that, we as Public Works, we need to access the pump house through the railway for loading chlorine and such. So we would have to incorporate mobile equipment traveling behind there, backhoes, hydrovacs, that sort of equipment. So coming onto the grass would be most ideal for Public Works.
Great. Really appreciate the discussion around Fairley Park. I think that this is one of the ones that at least there is a well-established theme and idea for how it is going to be used in the city. So despite the fact it's not Rotary Central Vote or Spirit Square that was detailed plans, I think there is it has developed down a certain path, and I think that it is a needed path in the city of Merritt. Not that this is probably the only spot where there should be play infrastructure for young children. We probably need to be looking at having that in other areas of the town as well, but having this as kind of one of the main areas for it is, I think, certainly good for the community. Any other thoughts on Fairley Park?
Yeah, just the idea that it is for young children. What about the parents that have a 3-year-old and a 6 or 7-year-old who wants a bigger challenge? And there are the moms that have that age split or whatever with the kids. Is there something we can do, a little tiny thing for some of the older group as well?
That's what we really try, or sorry, Sean, Your Worship, that's what we really try to incorporate with Central and Rotary, that those would be the attractions for kind of the older, keeping, I think Fairley is kind of classified as the 0 to 3, and anything above that would be the Central and Rotary.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is there's some parents that may have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, so there needs to, if she goes to the park with one, she's going to have the other one with her. So I understand that would be the young one, but maybe just a little bit of a structure for that potential older brother or sister.
Definitely understand the sentiment, and I see that Lori's got her hand up, and so we'll turn to her in just a moment here. The challenge, and actually some of the feedback that we've heard from this, particularly when you have young children, it's a bigger deal having big kids playing with the little kids in around the little kids. And so I think the idea is that it's actually easier for a parent if they have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, for example. We've got a 4 and a 2-year-old. So my wife now, because Finley's a little bit older, he likes playing on some of the other structures at Rotary and Central. It's easier for her to go to those parks now. So Finley can run around and play, and James just does whatever the heck he does. He's easily entertained. And so you're probably not wrong that we need to consider if there's a way that we can encourage that. But it's one of the tough issues is you don't want to encourage having too many older children at these parks because it can be intimidating for the young ones.
Well, and having said that, I haven't had children for a long, long time. And I don't know what the licensing and all of that, I don't know what they are anymore.
Lori has her hand up.
A sidewalk that curves all around the trees and throughout the park that little kids could run on, but not go any distance from their caregiver. And it could also host hopscotches, games, colored lines and things to keep them entertained and moving. But it would also help parents who are pushing strollers.
Good feedback. Thank you. Anyone else have anything on Fairley Park before we move on to Nicola? Okay, on we go. So Nicola Park, I don't think this is going to be a surprise for anybody. I think that this is probably the most underutilized park in the city of Merritt. It's beautiful. It's on the river. It's flat. It's got some real advantages. The major problem is that access to the site is currently very limited. And when I say that, I mean that in order to park a vehicle and get to Nicola Park, you either have to come from Lions Memorial and walk across the pedestrian bridge, or you park in what is private parking right now with the neighboring hotel, and you walk through that private hotel property. So the city needs to, it's not a question of if it's going to happen, the city needs to and will work with that property owner to secure a form of access to this park. Potentially, we could be considering access to the park from the other side as well, kind of the rear, instead of just the main. Why can't I remember the name of that road right now? Garcia? Yeah, from Garcia. I'm kind of embarrassed that that one spaced the way it did. But there's, I think first and foremost, it's about securing access. But this is one that has been kind of a blank canvas, and there has never really been a whole lot of ideas advanced for the area. So it's just been a field of grass that gets mowed. It's relative, it's not crazy hard to maintain, but the maintenance versus the usership right now it's not a very good ratio. So I think that this is one area where we would love feedback on what we can do to really make this well utilized. The other thing that I will say is it's roughly about 105 meters by about 50 meters in terms of width. And so it's too small for like a full-size soccer field or anything like that, in case that was where anybody else went, because that was the first thing that I know most of us talk about. So it's just a little bit too small for that. And of course, proximity to the river creates some challenges as well. So with that, would love to hear ideas and thoughts for what we can do aside from improving access to actually make this a usable park.
I have two questions. One of them is, aren't we putting in a lawn bowling facility there? And that would certainly shorten our ability to do anything there.
The lawn bowling facility is not moving. What's happening is a portion of the existing lawn bowling area is being reallocated to pickleball courts. So the footprint is going to stay the same.
Okay. The second question was, when you talk about a back roadway, are you talking somewhere around that area that we decommissioned Second Avenue?
That would be right around that area, yes. So if you look in the back where the line of trees is, off of Garcia, there's that is currently city property, so it may be possible to create a form of access there. The real challenge is that as it stands, there's no great parking spot for people to kind of park off of that area right now, and so I think that would be how you would preserve access on that side. Need to address that challenge
Without taking out all the trees, right?
Trees are pretty. Ideally, we don't like cutting trees.
Good.
Can I give
I
my
like to hear
idea
that.
for Nicola?
Shoot.
Community pool.
Oh,
Like an outdoor pool?
Yeah. You do have parking with the lawn bowling green parking lot in front. That is quite a large parking lot. If you were to increase parking along Garcia and the Second Avenue right of way, could be a potential for a community pool. That was my kind of idea.
like a kiddies pool?
Like, you know, during the hot Merritt summer when we're hitting that 38 degrees, you could have a shallow, you could have a deep, maybe create a position for a full-time lifeguard, and you would still maintain some green space. I think there's potential for that. I'm going to shoot for the stars.
Before anybody shuts down anything negative, what do I especially would love to hear from council and members of the public as to what they think, whether that might be a feasible use of the property?
Well, we did have an outdoor pool at the old Vote Park where the tennis courts are at one point, and we also did have our Centennial Pool, was it called, from 1967 until 1993 for sure, because the Aquatic Center opened approximately July 93. So I think people would like that in the summer because that's what we had, which bordered the Bailey House. So I think it would be popular with people, that's for sure. But I think it would be a draw.
And
I
we've
don't
got the
disagree. I
little,
think that'd be a good draw.
and we have the clubhouse too, as part of the lawn bowling group. So it's got potential for selling of snacks.
Yep, I think a little bit of reworking of kind of design and layout, I think that would be an option. A few of the other things that people have kicked out every time community pool comes up, you start hearing things like climbing walls, outdoor squash courts, some of those types of amenities. And those, they don't necessarily have to be in parks. In fact, a lot of times that you want to preserve green space as much as possible, but they can integrate very well into parks if they're done thoughtfully. So.
Well, I know Smithers put a climbing wall on a wall next to the pool, and that worked out really well. I know our pool is small, and the only place I could possibly think of is on the sidewalk as you go between the pool and the arena. But if we're looking at a place to put climbing walls, that's a potential. There's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of money, but just an idea.
Yep.
One of the challenges with any outdoor pool, and as a teacher who used to take her class every June to the pool and everybody would be freezing, it's the wind and the breeze through Merritt, and it's a really short outdoor pool season. So at best you'd be looking to 2 to 3 months it would be loved and kids would have fun. I'm wondering about, what about using the river feature, because you've already said, Sean, it could be a problem for little kids and for safety. Make it a large garden, contemplative, quiet space. People from town could walk down from downtown and have lunch there. Build up the floral and just make it a quiet green space with some picnic tables, but add and make it really enhanced and a quiet space for people.
Just out of curiosity, do you think one of the big things I have, because these are amazing undertakings and the most successful ones generally have kind of a strong volunteer or a society base who loves and cares for and nurtures the area. And it also, it provides something for, you know, certain age demographics that maybe are retired or whatever it is, that it can become something of a passion project. And it also allows it to be much more kind of cost viable for municipalities. Do you think that our community would have interest if you were to go down that route? Or do you think it would be best being city managed?
Well, city would always be responsible for the big ideas and big decisions, but it would be an awesome school project. I could see especially Central or Diamondvale or Bench being right into the idea of managing the planting each spring, as long as that doesn't cause union issues for you, but something where they've adopted it. Or, you know, Sean, you said some, before we had our previous conversation this week, you said some pretty profound stuff about when I complimented the city about the lowering of the flags. Maybe this park could be take on some of a permanent memorial role.
I like that idea.
In which case, Lillooet's used a lot. They've got First Nations or Indigenous owned gardening, landscape and consulting company that's been going into green spaces and school grounds in Lillooet and building parks similar to what Nicola Canford's done. It's xeriscaped, but it's got all sorts of features that are peaceful and something that could have a lot of depth and meaning beyond our city boundaries.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. And, you know, I think that those two probably ideas may not even be mutually exclusive. And I think you probably intend it that way. So again, a nice contemplative, serene site that has a memorial aspect to it would be, I can tell you, it would be certainly a lot better use of the parcel than what's there. So.
And
Well,
Sean,
I
can
really
I,
like Lori's comment about the xeriscaping. I think that would, you know, maybe that could be an example of how we could xeriscape around the community with our own gardens and everything, right? Maybe really seriously look at xeriscaping because, you know, as we've talked about, lawn and grass, expensive to maintain and water and everything, right? So I think that's a great idea, Lori.
Thanks, Tony. If anybody has a chance, go look at the the natural space they built in purposefully at Nicola Canford for just that purpose, to give the kids a quiet place to go and be.
yeah, and just to piggyback off that, those ideas, Lori, and I love the idea of the memorial as well. We of course do have Memorial Park, but this could be something, you know, more specific for that purpose. The other thing is, if we were doing something like that, having a community garden there could be a part of that potentially. There are apartment buildings nearby, as you can actually see them in the background there. And those residents, of course, don't have yard space. So anytime you have density or apartments, having a community garden space within the neighborhood is always something that that's good for residents to be able to access to grow veggies or whatever it is, and be able to, you know, have that quiet contemplative time, really gardening as well. So if we were to go down that route, that might be something we would want to consider as well.
I know at one time we had a community in Bloom. Would that be something that we could look at resurrecting? Would that be possible, do you think? For something like this?
Possible.
Yeah, just an idea.
I still like the idea of an outdoor pool.
Yeah.
So let's keep that in mind for somewhere like maybe Claybanks or Boat Park or.
Yeah, the big question is, because I think the idea of the outdoor pool is fantastic, and Lori does bring some kind of reality to the fact that it's a relatively high economic cost for the benefit, and so council would have to ask some serious questions as to the viability in this community. That being said, with consultation and discussion and feedback from the community, I think that it's definitely a worthy idea of exploring, whether it's here or on another site. Nothing wrong with that. So okay, I think there's been some great discussion on Nicola Park. Any other comments or feedback before we move on? I can already tell you with the number of things that we have, I think this might get split, and the other one may not be a town hall, but we might invite others to kind of come and do some generating feedback, because we're not quite at a spot right now where we're doing a full-blown update of the Parks, Rec and Culture Master Plan, but there does need to be some tentative plans and ideas explored, and staff can explore further if those ideas are kind of generally accepted by a thinking group, and then we can bring back more formal plans to council. So yeah, we've got another 9 or 10, and I know that I don't want to short suit any of the discussion we've got, but I also want to hold to the commitment of time. So next on up, Centennial Park. This is one of the parks that we have that actually I think is well treed. It's a beautiful park. It's got great walking paths through it. Some benches, but at the very least, I think some, again, picnic areas and things like that to encourage more use of the space is kind of a no-brainer. But is there another activity or something that could be done or implemented at Centennial Park that would make this a more used, well-loved space?
How big is the park? Approximately.
Let me go measure it and give you an approximate one right now.
I would ballpark 2.5 acres, maybe. 3
Okay.
acres.
Yeah, I think you're pretty close with that, Charlie.
Centennial Park's seen some pretty decent upgrades in the last 3 years. The walking trails were gravel previously, and those were recently paved. We have installed a couple of new picnic tables, as well a very nice Allen block wall around the sign and flower bed.
Yeah, just a tiny bit over 3 acres is what we're looking
Okay.
at. So it is well, yeah, it's well maintained, looks good. And it's kind of got that nice feature in the middle where all of the paths meet. And I feel like there might be an opportunity for something there to again make this a little bit of a space that's fun for people to go and just be. As it stands right now, I think it's fairly underutilized, but we'll talk. There's now the parcel right across the road from there that has also recently been rezoned as park, and so creating a plan to maybe harmonize how these things could be used together. There's some opportunities there.
Sean, one of the things I find with, you go to a lot of cities, I'm thinking of a town in Washington State, Wenatchee, they really link all these parks with walking trails, biking trails. And I think that's part of our active transportation plan, I think too, Don, is I think it's really key to get these linked together so that people can, hey, I'm going to bike from here and I'm going to go to have lunch in this park and then I'll meet people in this, that kind of thing, that linking. And I think Centennial Park really allows for that, because the trail that comes from Claybanks goes to the bridge there. It could come across there, and we could be looking at putting the trail on the dike there, on the berm there. And that's huge to me, is linking these parks together is something that we really should be looking at doing, right?
I think that you raise a really good point, particularly because, am I showing the right screen now? So you've got, of course, Vote Park here, Centennial
Mhm.
Park is here, and then you've got the newly created park on this side. And so where you've got 3 parcels that are all designated as park together, creating the right linkages and creating potentially some synergy in how those are
Yeah.
utilized, and making it so, there could be some connections between them instead of just treating them all as independent parks, I think is a really interesting idea. Something that with some creativity could be explored.
Yeah, I think that would be huge. People, then they can go to a park, they can have some lunch, and then they can go for a walk, right? Go along the trail, and then you can come back to the park, kind of thing. That's always an attractive thing to do. I think I could be wrong, but I think it is. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Very good. Okay, any other thoughts, comments on Centennial Park? Are people generally happy with it as it is?
Sean, sorry, just another idea. I see a lot of our parks too, and it is Merritt, and it gets pretty hot in the summer. And I think we talked about that at Farley. It'd be nice to see maybe a couple picnic tables with, like at Mung Park, they have the covers over the picnic tables, right? I wonder if it'd be worthwhile looking at a couple of those in this park here, a little closer to the river too.
And I think we've also heard in the past that the residents want lighting at this particular park because there is no lighting available for the dark of winter.
Well, I think that people have mentioned that because Centennial is close to the Ball Diamond, isn't it? That the concern for lights is that people wanted it closer to the RCMP station where there was activity.
This
No,
is over the bridge.
Centennial's-
This one over the bridge in Collettville.
There's a
that-
Collettville, Adam.
yeah. No. Sorry, I was mixing up Rotary and yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But lighting over there, yeah, that came up. Centennial, that one came up where people were concerned about activity or what was happening at nighttime, and because it's not well lit, they were concerned about activity that was happening there because it was close to Vote Park and people could run quickly on bikes or something like that.
Other thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think just on that note, making sure that we're not just thinking about our parks, so not specifically to Centennial, but that we're not just thinking about summertime use of parks, but
Yeah.
year-round use of parks. And so
Yep.
lighting becomes really important. And I'll throw one out there just to add it to the list. And I'm not sure which park might be best suited for this at the moment, but an outdoor skating rink for the winter time. Could be a lot of fun for families as well, but I don't know that Centennial would be the central location for that. So
Yeah, and there is the outdoor skating rink up in the bench right now. Again, it's thankfully volunteers take that project on and really ameliorate what we can do there. But yeah, there's certainly something that can be considered.
And is there the potential for having it as an outdoor skating rink, the sports box at Central? I know it needs upgrades, but is that a possibility?
The answer is yes. Yeah, it is a possibility. And quite honestly, there's been a fair bit of talk about it needing upgrades. It's a concrete surface. There is freeze thaw that is going to happen. Like if you put water on it, it's inevitable, but there's already some cracks there because it's been done in the past. If you don't take great care to keep it dry, freeze thaw and heaving's going to happen. But where the concrete's there, I think that talking about how we maximize the usage of that multi-use sports box, I think is really where the discussion needs to go, because I think that there's lots that can be done with it if we get creative.
Yep.
A lot of these questions as well stem from, I think historically there's been concerns about liability and other things like that, because there are some volunteers who at least were keenly interested in assisting with that project, but legal stuff gets or got in the way. And so I think that there's opportunities to look at how we can resolve some of those concerns and issues to be able to allow more community involvement in some of this recreation and infrastructure that they love.
I think that's a great idea, for sure.
Other thoughts, or are we moving on? On we go.
I really liked Tony's idea of linking up all of these parks, because the river walk along the Coldwater is really popular. It connects well to Central. And you've also got the inactive train, the old train line. Does that belong to the city now?
Portions of it.
Portions of it, yeah.
Because that would hook up to Fairleigh as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Don can probably elaborate on this, but we've actually recently got a grant application in for a West Merritt active transportation path that would do exactly what you're talking about there. Did you want to add to that, Don?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a plan in the active transportation plan. We considered all of our existing parks and future potential parks and how those would all link together through pathway and bike lane, et cetera. And one of the projects that we have identified is the West Merritt active transportation path, which would connect Boat Park up to Quilshena along the rail bed there over to Fairleigh, then down Cleesby onto Coldwater to Vote, and then down Vote and connect to the other side of that Coldwater Trail. So it creates a loop through the western side of the city. But there is also across the bridge here a plan to build a multi-use path or some sort of path. It hasn't been identified yet what that will look like, but that will go north-south through Collettville, and that would connect down to Lindley Creek, where we also are planning to have a multi-use path along Lindley Creek Road from Hill Street, so by the elementary school there, all the way to Boat Street Bridge, and that would then connect again with that Coldwater Trail, and potentially a future expansion of that Coldwater Trail as well. So yeah, we're always thinking about linkages with pathways, with park spaces, and with amenities, and how we connect those through neighborhoods. So the active transportation plan, if you haven't seen it, it's on the website, merritt.ca/ATP, and you could take a look at the plan network there.
And to add to that, some of these developments that we're looking at also have a requirement for trails in the places that we want trails to be. All over the place. I didn't want to pick just one or two.
Lori, did you have a follow-up on that?
No, I love the idea of I did look at the transportation plan, and it's going to be great for the city. Yeah. One of the things that may get a fuss from the neighbors, but I think the city already did a really good job in using the low level path lighting, so it's not bright and disturbing the neighbors, but it provides enough safety light. The ones used in Rotary Park would be great for this park too.
Oh. And I think that as we move towards more of the LED lighting, it's brighter. Some folks describe it as more harsh, but it's a lot more directional. And so it is actually far better for some of the light pollution concerns that people have historically had. So as we need to replace lights, it will certainly be with LED lighting on the city side. And we've been very fortunate. BC Hydro's let us know that they're going to be replacing 600 and some odd lights through town with LED lighting. 624 it is. I hope you're right.
Am I right, Charlie?
You're bang on, Your Worship, bang on. And if we could even start looking to remove ourselves from the BC Hydro connections and look at solar for our parks. You know, Merritt is very full of sunshine in the wintertime as well. I think that would be a great reduction on cost for installation, and maintenance on them is quite minimal as well.
That's awesome suggestion.
Yeah, great idea, Charlie.
Great, yeah, excellent idea.
Moving on, Lions Memorial. This is one that it's quite a small space, and for the space that's there, it's very dedicated towards picnicking right now, and that might be perfectly acceptable for what it is. This is one area where the city has had conversations with food truck operators and things like that who sometimes want to operate out of city parks, and so that might be one way that we can encourage activation of this space and some of the other park spaces as well. I think that's something that we need to be mindful of in multiple areas of town and in our downtowns, is how can we create not just for the permanent existing structures or permanent existing businesses, how can we think with event mentality and setting up spaces for more congregation? Because we've all learned, especially through COVID, we miss it. That's where a lot of the fun is. Bring food and people together and some music, good things happen. So
one of the things I like about this park is the beautiful color that we create every year, and it does take staff time to do that, but it's kind of a neat, colorful little corridor along Boat Street. I like it.
Yeah, the landscaping, the flowers are done very well by the Public Works team with that.
My only concern here with this one is, food trucks and that is it's a small park, and just the traffic congestion and that would worry me a little bit there, Sean. Just
yeah. We certainly not
start setting a few trucks in there, it get pretty busy really quick, right?
Yeah. Thanks for that feedback, Tony. When we've done it in the past, we've only ever authorized one to be in there at a time.
Yeah.
And so this isn't where you'd have like the big.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love that idea. I think it's fantastic. And that's part of looping all the parks. You have a different food truck in every one, right? You do their kind of like a buffet on wheels kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's a great idea.
Wait, time out for a second. That's actually a really good plan. I would go to way more parks if there was a food truck in every one.
I think it'd be a great idea.
I think you said it as a joke, but I'm dead serious. I like that.
No,
I liked it as well.
No, I think it would be a great idea. Something to look at for sure. Yeah. Good.
I like the idea of buffet on wheels. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
All right. Any specific comments for Lions Park and what we may be able to do more or differently there? Do we need to, one thing that we have heard, and I don't know if it's common across the board, but do we need to kind of formalize the parking there? It's fairly ad hoc as it stands right now. And I think for the most part, it works okay, but it's maybe not ideal. Has council or anyone from the public heard or experienced issues with that?
I haven't heard any from the past, but if we start putting something in Nicola, I can guarantee you there'll be parking in that park and walking across to Nicola.
I agree with you, Mary. Yeah, it would be nice to clean it up and standardize it. That's for sure.
I can maybe just touch base a little bit on the asphalt condition of Lions. It is a grinding surface. So we do have under our operation budget to hopefully have that overlaid with fresh asphalt this year. And I think that will really give it kind of a blank slate to really look at where we could start painting lines for parking, even maybe a large on the riverbank side, a large parking stall for a food truck. And then from there, we could kind of look at the overview of it and what would best be suited for cars in that parking lot.
I think painting lines in there would be a good idea, because when you get your Canada Day events or the grad parade or the events that happen there, that parking lot gets quite full. And when you don't have lines, people tend to park however they want, maybe taking 3 spaces. And sometimes even when there are lines, people park like that anyway in town, in various parking lots. So I think having the parking lot lines to make sure that people park in an orderly fashion would be reasonable to help, control traffic somewhat, just, harmony among the citizens maybe.
stop the road rage that happens at Lions Memorial, eh?
Well,
I
when
get-
there's busy times, it's busy in there and it's hard to find a spot, and then you won't necessarily have people blocking other cars and parking and things like that. I don't know if you've ever tried parking in there on Canada Day or during a
Yep.
grad event. It
No,
could
you're
be-
There
right.
are
Blocks
times that
through-
you end up having Canada Day or whatever event like that, parking even up to the arena. Grad Day, all
or
of it.
further. Yeah.
I think that this is one area that, for what it is, there's not a lot of land there. I think that we've kind of made the most of what can be done, aside from a little bit of cleanup. I think that it's good for what it is. You see quite a few number of travelers in the summer that you can tell are tourists. They're stopping, they come out, stretch their legs, have a picnic. So I think that there may be more opportunity to, market signage, things like that, to encourage people to do just that, to get them there. But I think that by and large, the space itself is fairly good. So next on up, we're getting into some of the newly created park areas. So on this is up on Forksdale, so just south of Irvine and bordering the BC Hydro property. This was part of the 5% land dedication as part of a recent rezoning. And so the park hasn't formally been established, so this is not dedicated yet, but the zoning is in place. And I think at the time there was just talk about some playground equipment and a place to sit. There isn't a huge swath of land with that. Do you remember offhand the exact size, Don?
Yeah, it's about half an acre.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, because there's a lot of dog walkers in the area, a suggestion that was put forth was, having a doggy bag station, that kind of thing. But, potentially a little playground area for kids. But yeah, it's quite a small space, about half an acre, as I say.
I was going to say, I'd like to see more doggy bag dispensers throughout the parks. And I know that people come and take all of them, and then you've got none for the next day. But I think we need more doggy bags and more garbage cans. That's my position everywhere.
Yes.
I agree with you there, Mayor. That's for
Or
sure.
sometimes you'll find people will maybe pick up after the dog and then leave the bag because there's no garbage can. Like they can't walk it to their own garbage can or something. I don't know.
But trees as well. We've got a windy city. Trees are always great things to put in. Got any ideas for us, Lori?
This may be jumping the gun and anticipating something Sean's going to bring up later, but if this entire area is zoned for medium to high density, I'm hoping there's more planned parks for the neighborhood, because we'll have a lot of people in a small area and they're not going to necessarily have their own yards.
Yeah, it's great feedback. You'll see two others in the area here that are kind of, I'll say blank canvases, but they're likely to be a different nature of park given their proximity to the river. And so we may approach it differently, but I think they can definitely still be great areas of respite. Again, when done thoughtfully and with being mindful of the environment. So those will come up here, Lori.
Sean, and with that, with the higher density over there, and Don, you might pine in on this one too. Have we thought more about some, not just park space, but community garden space in these areas as too? Because like you say, these townhouses and that, people aren't going to be able to have gardens. But yeah, have we thought more about that as well? I think that'd be good for those areas.
Vertical
Yeah.
gardens, some of them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. So I mentioned that this park here is not large, but it could be a good spot potentially for a community garden. it is on the radar of staff as well to look at other potential solutions in this area for park space, but those nothing right now, because of course there's large vacant parcels there that when they're subdivided we'll have to give park dedication as well. So there could be other park space there, and then also have another idea, but can't really talk about it at this time as well. As far as the ones on the river that'll come up later, those are going to be, you know, nature sanctuary areas, so different type of park as Sean mentioned, but still protected green space.
Cool.
Okay, thank you everybody for the feedback there. Next, we've got, again, this is the exact same situation where you've got a development that has been proposed, subdivision going through, so the rezoning has happened, but the park hasn't formally been dedicated yet. And so this is a fairly large area of land, 24 acres, is that correct, Don? So 24 acres of land that ultimately will connect and form kind of one large Windy Canyon Park for the city. This is going to be an ongoing process because there's actually 4 different parcels that are involved. So there's the area in green here that you've seen that has been rezoned and will happen as part of this subdivision process. The parcel here you see in red is actually Crown land right now. And so at some point in the future, that would be an application through Crown Land Tenures to be able to acquire that land. And that will likely happen. With this one here, we may be able to make that application right now, but it would definitely happen once we also secure this portion of land. So this is all industrial land up here, and there's some park zoning along the way, but the idea is that from the road, kind of preserving the existing access to the Windy Canyon area, that there would be following the natural topography, so you're not going to be taking too much of the developable light industrial land, creating access to Windy Canyon there, and it would also encapsulate this red parcel right here, and then it's cut off, but there's area to the south there that's part of a separate, much larger parcel that colloquially goes by Soleato Ridge, I think. There hasn't been a formal development plan for it in recent years, but a fairly good chunk of Windy Canyon is in that area as well, and so the city would be seeking to secure that as parkland in the future. So this one is, I think, a really exciting and ambitious park project, and what has been secured here is just part of that. So I think the basis of the idea is that it's going to be fairly natural. There isn't going to be a whole lot of improvements aside from perhaps enhancing some of the paths and trails. Thoughts? Concerns, questions?
Great idea.
I think it's one of the more exciting parks in the city because it lends itself to hiking and mountain biking, and actually there's some mountain climbing kind of goes on there too, with guys bouldering and climbing. So I think it's a very robust park that's going to be there. So I'm quite excited about that one over in that part of the city.
Yeah. Lori?
That park is famous around the province with rock collectors and lapidary people because of the mountains behind it. One suggestion when you're planning the park, and I love the idea of mountain bikes, but you're going to have the motorbikes and motorized vehicles who've been using it despite the private property and the no trespassing signs. And it's something to decide if you want it, and if you don't, how are you going to handle it in a way that's going to keep everybody safe?
it's great feedback. It's something that's actually come up in a couple other areas as well. When we've talked about North Bench, that's come up, as well as over in the 286 area. You know, it's one of the things that residents have often talked about, is the importance of creating some degree of separation of uses so that people can feel safe in, you know, on a given path, knowing they're not going to get steamrolled by somebody zipping on by. So I do think that kind of planning in term, and a lot of it is just signage really, is be really important.
And I think on the other hand, the history is that motorbikes kind of took over that space years ago, and they've also made a lot of the trails up in the North Bench area. So it's the motorcycles that were there previously.
I think the most important part of that is just finding a way to accommodate everybody on this, so there isn't hard feelings on that. And I agree with you, Lori. I mean, the canyon itself, you don't want motorbikes and that going in there, because that's for other activities and everything. But there is enough space over there that we can easily accommodate all the users there. I think it's just that, as you say, Mary, you've got to have the proper signage here. Okay, no mountain bikes here, motorbikes here, but you can mountain bike, motorbikes over here, but just beware.
You can mountain bike, but in its day, I don't know that motorcycles ever used that canyon. I know there was a lot of hikers and walkers, but bikes are new to that area.
Yes,
motorbikes. They never used to be there before.
Yeah, we can provide some feedback, but there is one additional challenge that I think council's probably considering. But when it's kind of city-owned parkland, there is additional considerations, of course, for liability and usage versus when it's crown land. It's a whole lot easier to say go ripping around in crown land with some of the motorized vehicles and things like that. So I'm not saying it can't happen. There are areas of British Columbia where municipal parks do allow for those uses, but there are additional considerations that council is going to need to go through at that time.
Yep, for sure. And it's not like we don't have enough space for it all either. It's just what people get used to and familiar with, right? We're gonna have to change change a few habits on it, I think.
Well, and change maybe across the board, because I think if we're having any walkers in that area, I don't think you can have motorbikes, or not motorbikes, even bikes coming down there.
And I think scary. It can be scary at times,
whether it's motorized or not.
Yeah.
People have used that area in the Lindley Creek area for years in the past. It's just now there's been things like Secure All storage is up there, but long before those buildings were there, you would have people in dune buggies or dirt bikes, not motorcycles, dirt bikes.
Yes, exactly.
Buggies and vehicles like that, because some of those hills are pretty good, and the mud, and people used it as a form of entertainment. So I think that you'll still see that. You just won't see it in the hours that City Hall's open. It's just, let's be honest, you know, but there are other areas that people can find in Crown Land, and there's lots of trails, and Merritt has a draw because of our dry climate. So we can try our best to accommodate everybody, but
there's lots of space for everybody, Adam. Absolutely.
There's been lots of, I wasn't finished. There's lots of space and lots of people that want to enjoy that area. And even if we put up rules, and people are going to do what they do. And especially with a plate process that ICBC has now and whatnot, there's a lot more people active with that than there was before. Well, that we see anyway, or that I've seen in my job. So I think we're still going to have that issue regardless of what we do. Thanks.
And I'd just like to add one thing there, Sean, with regard to access for all. You mentioned access off of Midday Valley Road, which we'll be ensuring, but with the development off of Lindley Creek there'll be access on the Hill Street extension. The developer there is committing to constructing a small parking lot for users. So nice. There'll be access just at the north of where it says proposed park dedication there. So
excellent.
Good. All right. Well, next we're moving into the lightning round, because I realized it was goofy to take all of these parks that don't have anything and have a dedicated page for it. So I started putting them all on all on individual pages here. So at the very one of the last things that the previous council did in 2018 was create call it Island Nature Sanctuary, and the formal rezoning happened. So these 3 parcels here are parkland, and this is actually road right of way that at some point we're going to need to clean up, do some consolidation for. So there's some kind of parcel work that needs to happen here. But as it stands right now, this has been set up as a nature sanctuary. It's a really beautiful site for anybody that's been there. There used to be a pedestrian bridge that would walk across that was washed out in, was it the 2017 or the 2018 flood, Charlie?
18.
I thought it was before my time, so the 2017, I believe.
Yeah, I think you are right with that. So you can still kind of see the remnants of it, and I still hopped across, but there was a pedestrian bridge here. And so one of the main things that we would need to look at is in this area, there's no, they're currently landlocked parcels is really what it comes down to. And so we would need to work with another private property owner, so either that of the owner of Nicola Meadows or the owner of the adjacent farm. I have to be careful not to say names. I get really tempted just to say everyone's names. The owner of the adjacent farm, and come off of McGoran Place and create some form of right-of-way access to actually get to the park. So similar to Nicola, except more exacerbated here, is we would need to find a way to access the park. And then the second challenge is actually, given this is an area that is very flood prone, what is the infrastructure that you would actually be using to get across? Because even right now, if you were to go there, it would be very marshy. It wouldn't necessarily be full of wouldn't be river that you're crossing, but you need some form of crossing there that is going to be able to be resilient and withstand flood. Or maybe it's a temporary thing that gets put up. That was something that somebody said, and you just leave it up for portions of the year and take it out for freshet. Or it's complicated, but there's ideas that have been floated, and that's something that can be considered. I know people have said that having some paths and again some benches to go sit and read and enjoy nature would be desirable. So
it seems to be a stretch to be able to develop it within the next, I don't know how many years, 10 years. I suggest that we leave that park until we have access to the Garcia Street from one end to the other. Meaning Garcia hitting vote at some point.
let me just zoom out and share this on the Muni site. So these are the same 3 parcels here. And so one idea that had been considered was, of course, you've got the this is McGoran Place here, and then this is the property, the farm property there. So creating an access through the bottom of that ALR property and allowing access through here, either that or allowing some form of access from Nicola Meadows. So it's not that it would be impossible. It would just take some discussions with neighboring landowners. And then again, right here where my mouse is hovering there, you need to be able to get across what is something of a marshy area.
So we're not even talking Garcia, we're talking.
Yeah, correct. This is
quite a ways away.
Yeah. So the alternative is it's very natural floodplain. It's not like there's anything that imminently has to happen with this, but it has, members of the public have asked questions about, how are we going to be able to access that? We would like to be able to access that. So it's something that has come up. So questions, thoughts for what we might do there?
I just have one suggestion around the access to Sean, because sorry you took community site back down, but
Oh, sorry.
The road that runs dedication that runs east-west across the river is Conklin Avenue, and so if you just zoom up a bit there to the north, yeah,
right
that's
behind the buildings.
Yeah, that's Conklin right there, and it's not built yet, but there is potentially future ability to do that, or to have a trail through there or something. So there could potentially be an access, but you would then need to cross the Nicola River there, and
Yeah,
that's the challenge there.
And that one, engineering wise, is of course more challenging, more problematic. Larger investment would be required than what is only going to be filled during a portion of the year. So you're totally right that it could happen. And I think when it's been talked about in the past, that it actually has been talked about sometimes in the context of creating a larger connection across the river anyways, for having multiple paths to get across. But that's a very big and separate discussion for another time.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on this? Is this something that, again, there's no decisions being made right now, but comfortable with kind of leaving it as it is? Is this something we should be talking more about for how we can ensure access? Do we get access and then just not worry about it?
This is part of our OCP though, isn't it? A second access across that area at some point to connect downtown to boat in a one-way capacity.
Yeah, I mean, most likely it would probably be River Ranch if there was going to be a crossing. But there's, I don't want to again get into the transportation side, because there's a whole bunch that hasn't been decided, hasn't been finalized there. So.
Okay. A crossing is what we're talking about. We don't know where.
Yeah, we haven't hit the population triggers to need to worry about it too much yet, but I think that is important planning for the city. Okay, next on up, there was the recently rezoned parcel up on Parker Drive. So this is right above Central Park, and kind of beside the golf course. And so the city owns this parcel here, and with the adoption of the recent zoning bylaw, this was rezoned park. This actually is set out in the Parks, Rec and Culture Master Plan. It doesn't go into any great detail, but again, talks about having some, picnic, a little bit of shade areas, creating some trees and some small playground equipment. The idea is that the view is, of course, really, really beautiful up there, and it would provide another kind of small community park area up here.
That site is also used for fireworks watching and a number of things. So no matter what we do with it, it's nice sometimes just to have it open enough that people can use it to view fireworks.
Good. Other
Lori?
thoughts? Feedback?
Does the city of Merritt have a memorial bench purchasing program?
Yes, we do. We need to advertise it better.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful place for people to donate benches to their loved ones?
Mm.
I think it's a good suggestion.
And There's also a plan to connect it to the active transportation pathway down below, correct?
Absolutely. That's part of the
Excellent.
connection, and that there are just the nature of the slope. There's a bit of challenge with that, but it is part of the plan. And as that park sees some form of development, that would definitely be worked into it. Did you have anything that you wanted to add on that, Don?
No, I mean, in terms of the path, it's certainly in the plan. But as you rightly mentioned, Sean, there are some engineering challenges there, and Charlie can probably speak to that a little bit. But on the memorial bench program as well, if I'm correct, I mean, we're evaluating that right now. But it's my understanding that memorial benches are supposed to be directed to a particular park in the community. Centennial is where I thought was the park that they were supposed to be located. But
I think it did get broadened a little bit. That being said, it is a program that I think needs to be reviewed and revised, because it was very prescriptive before in terms of your bench has to look exactly like this. These are the 2 tree options that you're allowed. And so I understand what the intent was, creating some degree of uniformity with it, but it really kind of killed the intent. As somebody wanted to create something that honored their their loved one in a way that was going to be meaningful for them, and being forced to do something that they thought was less than ideal. And the cost of the items we were using was quite high as well. And so definitely some reworking to be done, but I think opening it up to more areas of the community is great feedback, and it's something that we can and should do, and this may be a great candidate for it. You will note as well that there is a bit of a property piece that we're going to need to address here, because you'll see the main path up does pass through private property as it stands right now, and so some form of agreement and accommodation would need to be resolved for that. But I think that it explains the idea at the very least for what can be done there. Now, the next one on up is the park that is south of the BC Hydro substation. And this is one that it's fairly thick through there. And so I don't know if this is ever really going to even be able to see paths. Have you been through there, Don, or has anyone from the public been?
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with this one. The upper part there, you can see the sort of the sandy gravel area, just to the west. Yeah, that's sort of a plateau above, and the rest of it is sort of down the bank, and it actually floods during this time of year. So a lot of that green space there has water through it, and it's a great birding spot. There's so many different types of birds in there. So we've had ideas floated around about potentially putting some sort of gazebo or a viewing platform up at the top there for bird watchers. Had a suggestion at the eastern side where you were originally pointing there, Sean. It's a bit of a lesser slope down there. So potentially having a place to put your canoe in the river, canoe or kayak in the river, because in the city there isn't really a spot to do that. A lot of people go out on the east side of the Coquihalla there and access over in that area, but this might be a potential spot to do that. So other than that, it's very much a natural space, and like I say, all of the low level area pretty much floods with water in the springtime, and yeah, it's just filled with birds. It's really something to behold. So.
I actually appreciate knowing that. This is an area that I know far less about. Did anyone else have comments on this area? I actually thought those were 2 great suggestions, the birding gazebo and potentially access to the river. So other thoughts?
With that, you need the lighting.
I like those ideas, Don, of keeping it natural like that in a birding area and everything, like a little refuge in the city there. That sounds like a great idea.
On that note, you'd probably have a heck of a time trying to take down any of those trees in the riparian area, putting paths in there,
for sure.
getting your applications in. It's it
Good
would
point,
not go
Charlie.
over well at the agencies.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Just seems a natural for that, though. Yeah, for sure.
So
What about instead, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead. I'll go
What
back.
about instead of trying to get people to have access to down below, building it? I'm guessing when the Springbank connector goes through, there'll be sidewalks. What about just building a platform that overlooks it and had sort of like the way it is up at the flagpole, explains the features of the farmland, the ranch land, and the river, and
Yeah.
some of the city history from that view, but not try to do something that's going to be bothered by the river or any changes in the river. But a platform.
Exactly, Lori. I think that's spot on. You know, especially this area of the city does have some archaeological sites. So having you know, some information about Indigenous culture and history in the area might be a great thing to have as well. We would have to work with the local 5 bands, obviously, on that.
Good feedback.
It would tie in good to the development on the old grasslands and their owners.
True. Next on up, similar area in terms of kind of natural riparian area. So this is one of the most oddly shaped parcels that has ever existed. So all of these squigglies with the little connector there, jut there with the tiny connector here, and these parts there. So once again, I think that right in here, there's a little bit of a slope, but you might be able to get an access in at that point without needing to alter the riparian area. That being said, I think that you're going to have a similar set of circumstances in this park as well.
Are we going to need the power saws from midnight to 4 a.m.? I'm just thinking of Charlie's response on being able to cut down trees.
These are jokes you're not allowed to tell.
Yeah, that was a joke, by the way.
One thing
I'm not authorizing that.
One thing I can assure residents is it won't be a cemetery. That's a joke that Lori will understand, but of course this is zoned P1, which is called Park and Cemetery, but it wouldn't be a cemetery as was rumored at one point last year. So, but it's definitely a nature sanctuary area. It's got those bluffs there, and it's a beautiful area of the city.
It would make a pretty cemetery, except during high water.
Yeah, there's some serious fears that I'm not going to elaborate with what that could do during flood season. Might leave a few more people traumatized, but
yeah, let's leave that alone.
No, but Tony, this was a real issue when Don did the rezoning and included this area in Parkland last year. All of a sudden, some of the people in my strata were going around from person to person saying the city was putting in a cemetery right below Nicola Bluffs. And yeah, the people were freaking out. I wrote Don an email to warn them because I realized it was parks and cemetery.
Yeah, I can see where the confusion would come in there, but then the rumor mill just sure gets going, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. It would be a nice way access on the Nicola Eagle Lodge facility, but the problem is there's also that great big, I don't know what you called it, Don, the settling pond or where the culverts drain out into.
Yeah,
So
there's a
it's pretty
stormwater
muddy.
fund there.
So I think that kind of the classification of these as a nature sanctuary, these are going to be lower priority for any form of kind of infrastructure development in and about them. But as we said, maybe some opportunities to kind of view the features and encourage that. Next, we've talked a little bit about this, but the park on Government Avenue. This is all part of kind of the future planning for the city and what its needs are going to be as we grow. And one of those identified needs is the expansion of the public works yard. And the concern is that when you expand that public works yard, the natural expansion is the existing dog park. And so this parcel has been identified as a potential candidate to be kind of the primary dog park in the city of Merritt. But we've also heard from residents that there may be a desire for more than just a single dog park, that having some areas, even if they're relatively small, multiple areas in town that allow for dogs would be something that would be really appreciated. But creating this one as kind of the prime dog park area had been considered. Alternatively, there is potentially the option to use a portion of Vote Park as a dog park area. And so I do want to be really transparent that that's something that is likely to need to happen in the very near future. And we would love feedback from residents as to the best way we could accomplish that.
Well, Vote Park is typically where they would have the dog show every May. I mean, it's not a big stretch from if you use part of it for that. Not that we have had the dog show recently, but
There's also the potential for Vote Park to be used by the high school for events in sports. I can't think of anything at this point.
Track
The
and
track
field?
is what I'm thinking of.
Track
Yeah.
and field.
Thank you.
Track
That's
and
the word I
field.
want. Yeah, for track and field. And we talked at one point of making a trade with the school on that piece of property. And right now it's rounded. It needs to be a different shape, but it's the school, the high school, that uses it the most. So we have to make sure that we kind of.
I think you've hit on one really important topic, Mayor Brown. When we talk about park generally, here, of course, we're talking about city park. But when you're looking at kind of community green space, it'd be really kind of senseless not to involve school district in that conversation and have some joint planning around making sure that these spaces are not only going to meet their needs for students, but understanding that they do serve as community green space in the off hours. And so us working with the school district, whether that's involved with land swaps or potential other ideas to make sure that we're making the most of any existing areas, I think is something that's really important. And speaks to this council's desire to spend a lot more time collaborating, not working in a silo and coming up with individual plans, but trying to work with other organizations to ensure that the plan is going to be what's best for the committee as a whole. Community as a whole. I definitely just said committee as a whole.
We knew what you meant. It's late.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sean, there, because, if we look at it as a city, yeah, we're devoid of parks in that part of the area, but we're not really, because you got the one park on Phillips Avenue that belongs to the school board, totally underutilized because it's not even a school in there anymore, right? So are we really short of park space over there? It's just how we're working with other partners, right? That's kind of what you're saying, right, Sean?
Yeah, I think there's an acknowledgement that there may be opportunities above and beyond just utilizing city land, and how can we make the most of what's there. So yeah.
Have there been any conversations between the city and the school district about the site, the old Coquihalla Middle School, Nicola Valley Junior High site where they're moving the board office to? Because they're surrounded by green space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. without, you're asking a tough question.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. I'm offering you
Yeah,
a suggestion.
I can tell you,
haven't thought
we've
of it
had
themselves.
conversations with the school district on that front, and nothing has come to, any decisions or fruition. But we're definitely trying to be very cooperative and working. Anytime we see opportunities to address a concern, even if it's not just with the city, we're trying to take advantage and have those discussions. So
there's also that tiny park by the gymnasium, behind the high school gymnasium and the armories as well. That little park that has, I don't even know if it's green anymore. Nothing's ever been done with it, but that may be needed by the school district. I have no idea.
Yeah, and so there's a few parcels on here, and we'll get to Phillips in just a moment. But we talked about Walnut, we talked about that one. We've talked about one other one up near the elementary school site. So there are other kind of park spaces, and there's certainly more as other subdivisions and development happens in the future. And so this is something that needs to be, in my opinion, more of an ongoing discussion as opposed to here's the plan, you don't touch it for the next 10 years. We need to have a process for how we plan out parks. But most importantly, we need to plan these things out and then build them into our development cost charge bylaw so that when any development comes through and DCCs are charged, we can allocate portions of those dollars to projects that are going to create and improve our parks infrastructure. So I know that that's something that Mr. MacArthur is very passionate about as well. So I can guarantee you that you will be seeing this when the next iteration of the DCC bylaw comes up.
Speaking of that, can I ask Dawn a quick question? I know I brought this up some time ago, and we've kind of avoided because it's not really legal, I guess, or anything. But we've talked in the past, and some communities do this. Dawn, is community contributions, community amenity contributions, as well as DCCs.
Yeah, so community amenity contributions are a bit of a different beast. It's a way to receive contributions to facilities or park spaces that sort of are negotiated during development processes. They work really well for larger municipalities where they're collecting large numbers of dollars from developers, but they can be a little bit more challenging sort of on our scale of development, because if you get X amount of money from this developer, and put it in a pot, like, is that enough to do anything with, right? And so, but it's something that we've explored, and we might be able to look at that more in the future. It's something that Mr. Smith and I discussed a bit, well, more than a bit during the zoning bylaw writing. And so it's something that that's definitely been considered and not dismissed. It's something we might look at more in future. But there are also cash in lieu for parks that can happen as well at subdivision stages rather than park dedication. So if a particular neighborhood already has enough parks, potentially we could look at cash in lieu and then use that money for other areas of the city that are not served as well with parks for purchasing. So there's a number of different mechanisms that we can look at potentially.
I might as well jump in there with another one too. What about sponsorships too? How do we feel about those?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of corporate sponsorships or those sorts of things, I mean, if that comes up, I know that BC Hydro, I think, helped fund the multi-use path along Vote Street, for example. And so whenever there's opportunities for funds, I don't want to speak for council and for Sean and the finance team, but I don't think we would be opposed to donations to help fund some of these projects. And grant funding is another one, right?
And didn't we have Canadian Tire donate something? I don't know if it went through, but they were actually proposed to help out with the Central Park at one time. Playground.
Yeah.
I can speak to a little bit of that one. That came right on the heels of the park upgrade.
Right,
And
okay.
it didn't make the best sense. We kind of already went through and we built a brand new playground, and then they had approached us. So I don't know if that's completely off the table or just postponed, but it's been pretty quiet on that front.
Yeah, and just yeah, let's move on from that one there. The park on Phillips Ave. This here is another one of the parcels that, as a result of a subdivision, has the one that kind of looks like a, I don't know, keyhole like shape, has been created as part of a subdivision process. And so as council is very well aware, there is insufficient park space in Diamond Vale. You've talked about one of the potential solutions could be how can we work with the school district to, you know, maximize the use of some of the green space on their properties. Aside from that, what we're going to see is the importance of, as other development happens in and about the Diamond Vale area, to make sure that the park spaces that are created with land, that there's some priority given by council to actually seeing, you know, a plan and some infrastructure allocated to those parks to make them, you know, suitable as quickly as possible, instead of, you know, for example, what's happening in some of our other parcels, we're kind of playing a little bit more of a wait and see. These ones here, I think creating a plan and getting some infrastructure that is going to make this serviceable sooner rather than later is probably going to be beneficial for the community. There's also going to be some creativity that's required, because with the size of these parcels, it's not likely that you're going to get a single large park in Diamond Vale, aside from the school properties that are already there. And so potentially using single residential lots and creating you know, parklets or small park areas that have you know, some recreational features, but they're not going to be your kind of big sweeping mega parks like we have in other areas of town. So Diamond Vale is going to require some creativity for sure. Okay, like I say, I think that there's probably lots of further fleshing out that can and should happen as part of this discussion, but I propose that for tonight, we leave it here, Your Worship. Is that okay with you?
That is perfectly fine with me. I'm starting to fade, so it's a couple of hours. We can't do it all in one evening, but I think we've had some really good ideas up to this point. So we will do a phase 2 at some point down the road. But let's pull some of this stuff together and play with that and see what we come up with.
Yeah.
For another session.
Ultimately, I think we'll do a little bit more brainstorming and then potentially seek some guidance from council to create some designs for some of these different areas, so that we will either, if grant opportunities show up, we'll be ready on that front, or just building it into our upcoming budget plans.
I think that's great. Anybody else have any last minute?
No, it was a great presentation and it was a great discussion. Thank you, staff, for putting this together, guys. It was great. It helped me understand where our park situation is. And yeah, and Lori, thank you very much for joining us tonight and giving some great ideas.
Yeah, it would not have been the same without you, quite literally.
For sure.
We have a Jana online as well. Jana, did you have anything to contribute?
I think she's on mute.
Hi, yeah, no, this was really great. Thank you for the presentation. I don't have anything to add at this time.
Well, thank you. If you any of you decide to want to contribute something, pick up the phone, give us a call. Any one of us on here would be happy to hear from you, or email, call, whatever. I suppose that would be councillors. Staff have other agendas, but any councillor would be fine.
Yeah, call me anytime.
Yeah, provided you can find the number.
They're on the website.
They're on the website.
Not our cell phones.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight, and we'll put some kind of a program together. Program is not the right word, but we'll put it together for council to look at and review as a whole, and come back again to the public at another time. So thank you for your time this evening, and we'll let you go for the rest of the evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.